Tonight, WWE presents WrestleMania Backlash from inside the Youngling Center, inside the WWE Thunderdome in Tampa Bay, Florida. And what we're going to be previewing in this video is the WWE Championship match scheduled for the show. We've got the almighty WWE Champion Bobby Lashley defending the WWE Championship against his WrestleMania 37 opponent, Drew McIntyre, and the monster among men, Braun Strowman. Now, I really would like to give WWE the credit and say that this was always the plan, but I really don't think that's the case. I think it's I think it's very obvious that this wasn't the case. This wasn't the plan. This definitely wasn't the original plan. The clue's in the title, right? It's WrestleMania Backlash. I think the plan was to have a WrestleMania rematch on this show. Now, obviously, Bobby Lashley retains the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. And then the following nights, on Monday Night Raw, what do we have? We have a number one contenders triple threat match. Drew McIntyre versus Braun Strowman versus Randy Orton. And Drew McIntyre wins that match, and it sets up Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania Backlash. And everyone thinks, okay, we're going to get a WrestleMania rematch. That's what we're going to get. And that was originally the plan because, by all accounts, according to reports, Braun Strowman was set to feud with Randy Orton post-WrestleMania. Now, we now know that plans have ultimately changed. Randy Orton's doing a tag team with Matt Riddle. They're doing RK Bro. Braun Strowman needed something else to do. He's now involved in the WWE Championship picture. Okay. Personally, my feeling is that Braun Strowman's probably been added into this match because WWE quickly realized, okay, Drew McIntyre not winning the WWE Championship was the right call. That was the right call. I think most people heading into WrestleMania, myself included, thought that McIntyre was going to win because it felt like the match served a sort of process in the sense that Drew McIntyre didn't get his moment last year at WrestleMania. He didn't get that WWE Championship victory in front of fans. He won the WWE Championship against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 36 Night 2, but he didn't get it in front of fans. He didn't get the big moment that they wanted. It was his first WWE Championship victory as well, so he didn't get that big crowning moment on a grand stage in front of people, and everyone thought, well, he's going to get that a year later. It might be a year late, but he's going to get the moment that he didn't get last year. And as we sort of got closer to WrestleMania, I think a lot of people, myself included, realized, wait a minute, Bobby Lashley has to win. Yes, obviously you could go with Drew McIntyre winning the WWE Championship at WrestleMania, but Bobby Lashley has to win because Bobby Lashley is arguably one of the hottest properties on Raw right now, certainly one of the more compelling characters to watch and the most impressive characters to watch on that show. And you can't bill someone like Bobby Lashley as the almighty WWE champion, and then on his first title defense he loses the championship, even though it's against Drew McIntyre. You can't do that. And frankly, Raw needs the big stars right now. They don't have many. So when you're actually building one and you actually might have one, what do? Chop them off at the knees? No, that would be it's stupid. It would just be silly booking. It would be bad booking. So when Bobby Lashley retained the WWE Championship at WrestleMania, I think universally everyone went, well, it sucks for Drew because he didn't get his moment that he would have got last year at WrestleMania 36, but it's the right call. You have to go with what's right at the time, and what was right at the time is Bobby Lashley retaining. You can't be almighty and then lose your first match, especially on top of that, how Lashley has been booked for it's closing out, it's nearly a year, isn't it, since he was paired up with MVP, and pretty much since he's been paired up with MVP, he's done very, very few jobs. One to McIntyre at Backlash last year, ironically, but he's been booked incredibly strong, and it felt right. It felt right, so it was the right decision. So I think WWE probably had the working plan, and I don't know. I'm speculating here. I'm trying to read the way of the lands here, but I think WWE was probably thinking, okay, Bobby beats Drew at WrestleMania because Bobby Lashley needs to be seen as a credible champion. He can't lose his championship on his first defense, so Bobby Lashley retains at WrestleMania. Then probably the plan was, we'll do the rematch at WrestleMania Backlash. That's when Drew can pick up the championship again. So we still build up Bobby. He had not a lengthy title reign by any stretch of the imagination, but at least he got a defense in. And then McIntyre can continue to feud with Bobby, or maybe move on to facing Jinder Mahal or something like that. I then think the reason the plans changed, I think WWE probably looked at it as, why are we so desperate to get the title off of Bobby? Bobby's the best thing pretty much going on Raw right now. Maybe it's a bold statement, but he really is one of the better things on Monday Night Raw, certainly. Why would we want to get the championship off him? It doesn't make any sense. And then they realized, but at the same time, Drew McIntyre is the top babyface on Monday Night Raw. Arguably, he's the top babyface in WWE right now, too. We need to protect him. We can't, or we don't want to have a situation where Drew McIntyre is getting defeated. I mean, WrestleMania, I know MVP kind of got involved and all that kind of stuff, but it was pretty clean. I know they can say, well, Drew McIntyre, he never tapped out, and Michael Cole was quick to emphasize that on commentary, wasn't he? Oh, Drew McIntyre, he never tapped out and all that kind of stuff, but in reality, he lost. He submitted. It was a relatively clean victory for Bobby Lashley, and I think WWE looked at this and said, actually, we don't want to have McIntyre doing another job in 2 pay-per-views in a row. We've spent all of 2020... Literally, we spent all of 2020 building up Drew McIntyre as the face of Monday Night Raw, 2-time WWE champion, beating all comers. The only guy that beats Drew McIntyre is Roman Reigns and Randy Orton. Why would we have him do 2 jobs on consecutive pay-per-views? That doesn't make any sense. That's bad booking. So I think they quickly realized, well, we need to get someone in to take the pinfall, and ultimately, I think that's going to be Braun Strowman. I think that there's a possibility that, don't get me wrong, there absolutely is a possibility that Drew McIntyre could win this match tonight. That's not out of the realm of possibility to say that McIntyre won't win. It's a possibility. Regardless of who wins, whether it is McIntyre and Lashley, myself personally, I still do think Lashley will retain tonight. I do. But whoever gets the victory, it will be over Braun Strowman. I think it's pretty easy to say that Braun Strowman loses this match. So let's go, I suppose, through the pros and cons, if you will, of who would win this match. So Bobby Lashley, what's the pros of him retaining the WWE Championship? Well, there's so many, to be honest. As I mentioned, how can you be the almighty WWE Champion if you lose on your second title defense? If you're going to actually build Lashley up correctly as this almighty WWE Champion, you would have him have a very lengthy championship reign. On top of that, if you didn't have Lashley drop the championship at WrestleMania, where there were fans in attendance, there were live fans in the stadium at Raymond James Stadium for WrestleMania 37, and you decided, no, we don't want to have McIntyre drop the championship there, or McIntyre win the championship there, rather, and we don't want to have Lashley drop the championship, why would you wait 1 month later? Why would you wait a month later when there aren't any fans in attendance? Surely you want that title change to be special. That wouldn't make, for me, any sense, really. That wouldn't make any sense to do with no fans there when you had the opportunity to do it last month with fans in attendance. So I don't think they would do that. I think Lashley, personally, the cards are definitely still there on the table to do Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. Now, I know people are going to say, well, Brock Lesnar's not signed to WWE right now. Brock Lesnar's a free agent. He might not be coming back. He hasn't been on WWE television in over a year at this point. His last match was against Drew McIntyre, WrestleMania 36, Night 2, the main event. Drew McIntyre defeats Brock Lesnar, beats him for the WWE Championship. We haven't seen him since. Now, after that, and since then, we've subsequently found out that Brock Lesnar's WWE contract expired. They haven't reached an agreement as far as we're aware. He's still a free agent, and he can go anywhere he pleases. Now, obviously, people could say, well, he could go to AEW and all that kind of stuff. I think the ship has kind of sailed on that possibility. And to be honest, I never really subscribed to that theory anyway. Brock Lesnar, for as much as a mercenary as he may be in terms of money and finances, there's no doubt in my mind he is incredibly loyal for whatever reason to Vince McMahon. For whatever reason, Brock Lesnar and Vince McMahon have an understanding. They kind of like doing the negotiation dance when it comes to contracts and business, but I think if Brock Lesnar's going to wrestle for a company, he's going to wrestle for WWE. If he's not going to wrestle, he'll do something else. He won't go and wrestle for a company that isn't WWE. I think that's the most likely scenario. So I think, like most people in WWE, and we've seen these reports as well, that most people expect Brock Lesnar at some point to come back to WWE. That point that most people said that they thought he would come back would probably be when live fans return. And I guess the crucial thing is why I'm linking this into Lashley now is that live fans are going to be returning to WWE very, very soon on a permanent basis. Now, previously people would have said, oh, live fans return, well, he didn't return at WrestleMania. That's because even at Mania, there was still a degree of uncertainty as to where we were going to have live fans return to WWE television on a permanent basis. We now know that's not far off. The plan initially was to have live fans return for SummerSlam, and then that would be WWE's launching point to start touring again and having live fans return on a permanent basis. AEW this week made the announcement that they're returning to touring in July, and subsequently it's now been reported that WWE are also going to be returning to live touring in July, possibly with is it July 9th or July 16th, being the episode of SmackDown that will have fans back on WWE television, and also we're probably going to have fans at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view in July as well. So that could mean If we're going to have live fans returning in July, that would mean that SummerSlam, the biggest event of the summer, one of WWE's biggest events of the year, not only will have live fans there, there's been rumors of it being inside of a stadium, there's been talks of it being in Las Vegas. If we're going to have an event inside of a stadium with fans in attendance, that they can prepare for, and they would have had maybe a month's worth of live fans on WWE television too, that does lead one to think maybe WWE could now start to reach out to a Brock Lesnar and say, okay, I know we haven't spoke for a while, or whatever. Now the discussion can be, Brock, do you want to come back? Can we work something out? Do you want to come back? And if he does come back, there obviously are opponents for him to face. One could be Drew McIntyre, and it could be a WrestleMania 36 rematch in that you have McIntyre versus Lashley at SummerSlam. Maybe McIntyre wins the title back tonight and faces Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. Personally, I don't know if I really properly see that one. I think the most likely one, and personally as a fan, the one I want to see more, is Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. This has been the dream match that people have spoke about, I mean, for years at this point. Even before Bobby Lashley came back to WWE, there was the discussion of, can you imagine Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar? You know, you got two guys that were in pro wrestling, also went into MMA, had success in MMA. Of course, Brock Lesnar, former UFC heavyweight champion, I mean, ultimate success in MMA. But Bobby Lashley also very successful in MMA. I think he had several fights with Bellator. I think it's only one defeat in his career, but I think he's undefeated in Bellator or something like that. So he's very, very successful. And because of their success outside of the ring and inside the MMA cage, and then coming back to WWE, people had always said, two massive guys, two guys with unbelievable physiques, powerhouses, Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley, it's almost a dream match, but it could possibly happen. Then when Bobby Lashley returned to WWE in 2018 after WrestleMania 34, everyone said, wait a minute, Bobby Lashley, Brock Lesnar are on the WWE roster now at the same time. This is a possibility. And Bobby Lashley even said himself, the reason I came back, the reason I decided to sign with WWE in 2018 was because I wanted to face Brock Lesnar. And he said that he's had discussions with people and said that that's what he wanted to do. And he was told that, yes, that was on the cards at some point. And then after a while, he was told, no, it's not going to happen. Maybe you could kind of justify it, I suppose, initially, or for a period of time there with Bobby Lashley, of when Bobby Lashley's involved in feuds with or storylines in which he's paired up with Rhea Rush and he's bending over, flexing his glutes, or he's involved in a storyline with Sami Zayn and he's doing the Bobby Lashley sisters routine, or he's involved in a storyline with Lana and Rusev and the affair angle and the wedding and all that kind of stuff, and Liv Morgan being involved in all that kind of stuff, you could argue Brock Lesnar would look at that and say, why on earth would I face off against this guy? Where's the guy's credibility? You could have booked this guy like an absolute monster, an absolute powerhouse, but what have you done instead? You've riddled him with goofy gimmicks that are very difficult to come back from. Not the fact that he's not on my level, but you could understand Brock Lesnar saying, why would I work with this guy? Where's the money? There's no money to be made here. The difference now is that Bobby Lashley that was just in those terrible gimmicks and awful gimmicks, that's been changed. Bobby Lashley is arguably closer to Brock Lesnar in terms of status than he's ever been in his career. Now, I'm not saying Bobby Lashley is on the same level as a Brock Lesnar or anything like that. What I am saying is, though, that this is the guy that is the WWE champion right now. He did go into WrestleMania and retain the WWE championship, which is, uncommon. I mean, it's happened, but it doesn't happen all the time. It's, especially from a heel's point of view, it's a statement of intent by WWE. They realize that it's now or never when it comes to Bobby Lashley. The guy's 45 years old. He doesn't look 45 years of age, but if you're going to do something with Bobby Lashley, it has to be now. And thankfully, WWE have decided that they are going to do something with Bobby Lashley, and the pairing with MVP is just genius. There is so much synergy there, and it's a perfect pairing. Bobby Lashley is booked like an animal on WWE television. Also, it's the little things as well. It's the presentation of Bobby Lashley too. His entrance is excellent at the moment. It has one of the best entrances in WWE right now. The music, the intro, the start, and the pyro, everything works. When he made his entrance at WrestleMania, but again, my initial thought was, that guy's a star. That guy is a main event level, bona fide star. That's a guy that if they do a Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley, that's a big money match. That is a match that should be main eventing a SummerSlam. That is a match that could be main eventing a WrestleMania. So part of me feels at this point that Lashley shouldn't drop the WWE Championship, because if they're already in talks with a Brock Lesnar to return, it's then in WWE's best interest to keep building Bobby Lashley, keep building him, try keep getting them up these levels to the point that when Brock Lesnar does return, it does feel like just a complete juggernaut match. It feels like this epic match of the irresistible force versus the immovable object, as Gorilla Monsoon would say. It does feel that big, that epic. That is a match that if you're going to have that as the main event of SummerSlam, inside of a stadium with fans in attendance, that is money. That absolutely is money, and that's why I think Bobby Lashley should retain tonight, because whilst we've seen these reports saying, Brock Lesnar's not going to come back, or there haven't been any plans for him in SummerSlam, WWE hasn't even confirmed the location of SummerSlam, let alone the plans yet. So I think when it comes to, is Brock Lesnar going to come back, or what would he do when he comes back, let them sort out the location first, because I think universally will say it's a matter of time before Brock Lesnar returns. It is just a matter of time. So that's why I think Bobby Lashley should win this one. As for what the other two in this match do afterwards, I think Drew McIntyre is safe in that I don't think he takes the pinfall in this match. As I mentioned, I think it's probably going to be Braun Strowman. I could see a finish where maybe Braun Strowman gets hit with, I don't know, a Claymore, and then Bobby Lashley spears Drew McIntyre and then pins Braun Strowman, something like that. Keeps Drew looking pretty strong. I then think you could say, well, Drew McIntyre then shouldn't be involved in the WWE Championship picture, of course, because he lost at WrestleMania and he lost at WrestleMania Backlash, and they can then do the story about McIntyre having to try to get back to the top. I think the feud coming out of that would be that Drew McIntyre faces off against Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal's just returned on Raw. Obviously, they've got so much history together as part of 3MB. Their careers kind of parallel each other as well, in the sense that you've got two guys that were in just the lowest of the low comedic act, that were a joke on WWE television. They just did jobs and they weren't taken seriously and all this kind of stuff. They were playing air guitar with Heath Slater. It was ludicrous and ridiculous. They both get fired by WWE because they weren't, not that they weren't good enough, but they just weren't in the right place at the right time. They weren't being booked correctly. They get fired. They then go and turn it around in their own different ways. Drew McIntyre goes on the independent scene, becomes Impact World Champion, wrestles for a ton of other companies, gets himself into great physical shape, comes back, wins the NXT Championship, and eventually wins the WWE Championship for the first time in his career, becomes a big star. Jinder Mahal got released, floundered realistically on the independent scene, came back as part of the brand extension in 2016 just to be the same Jinder Mahal that he was before, to do nothing special, gets himself into the shape of his life, physical transformation, and the next thing you know, he's the WWE champion for the first time in his career as well. So it's a very similar parallel, and they are good friends in real life. They are best friends in real life. They do still train with each other most days in the gym. They still talk to each other most days in the gym, because that's a bonding experience, if there is one, of being at the bottom of the card going to the top of the card. And they've wanted to do this feud for a while. The plan was there to do Drew McIntyre versus Jinder Mahal last year on Monday Night Raw, whilst Drew McIntyre was the WWE champion. Obviously, because of Jinder's injury, his knee injury at the time, they couldn't do it. He had to go off, have surgery again, and he was off of television for another year pretty much, which was unfortunate. But now that he's back, looks, the knee injury is in the past. He's got two big henchmen with him as well, which also works because Drew McIntyre... Not that Drew McIntyre should easily dispatch of Jinder Mahal. It's not like Jinder Mahal is a small guy by any stretch of the imagination, but the babyface versus the heel and the heaters just traditionally always works really well. So I think Drew McIntyre is fine for feuds, and I think it gives him something to do into the summer, transitioning into SummerSlam, as I mentioned. Let's say Bobby Lashley is going to face a Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. Well, what's Drew doing? Well, he's facing Jinder Mahal. Well, that's solid. Now, as far as Braun Strowman, what does he do? I don't know. It's a shame when it comes to Braun Strowman, because this is a guy that at one point of time did have so much potential, and they should have made him the WWE Universal Champion earlier on in his career. 2017... 2018 was the time frame. They didn't do it. They didn't pull the trigger, and they had him lose over and over and over and over again to Brock Lesnar, and he just didn't feel relevant anymore. And yes, he won the Universal Championship at WrestleMania in 2020, but that was by proxy. That's because Reigns didn't show up, and he wasn't ready at the time. He had no momentum at the time. He just lost the Intercontinental Championship to Sami Zayn. He wasn't going to even be on WrestleMania, beats Goldberg in a couple of minutes, and that Universal Championship reign was just, so forgetful and bad. And that's not necessarily his fault. That's SmackDown during the pandemic, during those Performance Center shows that were crazy and nobody knew what was going on. I think he was a casualty of that, but it's just like a lot of things in his career, it's just the wrong timing. And he wasn't the Universal Champion at the right time. And when he did become Universal Champion, it was at the complete wrong time. And it didn't work out for him. So I don't know what he does. I don't know what he does coming out of this. But either way, tonight's going to be interesting. But I'm going to say that Bobby Lashley ultimately leaves with the WWE Championship. But of course, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on tonight's WWE Championship Triple Threat match? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.